crimes than whites do.
Okay, well, first of all, what he means by blacks commit more crimes is in fact that African Americans are more often convicted of committing crimes in the United States than any other racial demographic, which is very different from what he said.
Before I get this lesson started, Salaki, I want to give all praises due to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakakodash. I want to give double honors to the elders and the apostles, the great millstone of whom I learned from, and shalom to the other brothers that take this truth to the four corners of the earth, bidding the hopefully elect to the marriage supper of the Lamb, who is Yahushai. This is your brother Radah with a short lesson.
All that indicates is that the so-called criminal justice system in the United States is primarily only effective in the selective investigation, prosecution, and conviction of African Americans and other so-called minorities, as opposed to investigating, prosecuting, and convicting white perpetrators. The statistics that he's citing are actually an evidence arguing racial bias in policing, in prosecution, and in trials. It's not an evidence of greater criminality along racial demographic lines, no. Rather, it's only the assignment of criminality that falls along racial lines. I mean, more than half of all violent crimes in the United States go unsolved, overwhelmingly the case in certain types of violent crimes. So we're not talking actually about a criminal justice system that works, that's actually effective, that's actually efficient, that actually does its job. What we have is a criminal justice system that disproportionately seems to only quote-unquote work when the perpetrators are not white. African-American victims of homicide, by the way, make up most of the victims of homicide cases that go unsolved, whereas most homicide cases in which the victim is white, those get solved. In other words, crimes against white people are more likely to get solved than crimes against African-American people or any other so-called minority group or member of the global majority. And they're even more likely to get solved when the perpetrator of the crime happens to be African-American. So in other words, if you're a white victim, you're more likely to get justice, and if you're a white perpetrator, you're more likely to escape justice. That's the system, and that's all that is evidenced by what he's saying. So when you look at the number of unsolved crimes, it's not unreasonable to assume that say 60% or so of violent crimes in America that never get solved, that those are very possibly crimes committed by white people against African American people or against other so-called minority groups. So rather than saying blacks commit more crimes than anyone else in America, it would be more honest to say that no one who commits a crime in America is more likely to be punished for that crime than an African American. And in fact, it's also more likely for an African American person to be wrongfully convicted of a crime of which they are accused. And it's more likely for them to even be punished for that, even when they have been proven innocent. And you can look at the case right now of Marcellus Williams. So the statistics that he's citing actually only substantiate the belief that the so-called criminal justice system in the United States is a major component of what you can call a systematic domestic ethnic cleansing program in America, being carried out against African Americans and other members of the global majority. That's all that is evidenced by the statistics that he's citing. And this, in fact, demonstrates a vastly greater degree of criminality than anything that he mentioned. And I would go further to say that this speaker himself, with the statistics that he's mentioning and the interpretation that he's putting on those statistics, that he himself occupies a propaganda role in that ethnic cleansing system, for which, in my opinion, he could and should be prosecuted under international law. So I really would hope that people would take this more seriously and understand the gravity of what so-called minority groups, members of the global majority, what they are facing and what they are enduring, and the human rights violations that are committed against them in the United States, that you would take that more seriously, so that when you see someone who is clearly playing a propaganda role in support of what, again, does constitute an ethnic cleansing program in America, when you see someone who is occupying a role of propaganda in support of that system, normalizing that system, justifying that system, rationalizing that system, understand that this person is a criminal.
And with that, we're going to get some precepts. What system is that? That is the rulership of Esau, Edom, Amalek, the so-called white man, right? Let's get that precept real quick. So this is Isaiah 42:2, talking about the Israelites, right? In their captivity, when this will be fulfilled, and we see it mainly in America. I believe America has the biggest industrial prison complex system on the planet. And within that industrial prison complex system, they have the majority of people that are locked up are the Israelites, the so-called Latinos, blacks, Native Americans. But look at this Isaiah 42:22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth for a spoil, and none saith restore. So let me read that again. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith restore. Now, what does this sound like? You can get another precept. I believe it's in Wisdom of Solomon 2. And it goes into the inner mindset, the inner workings of the thoughts of the wicked, which are the Edomites, and how they write laws to oppress the poor man. And we see this. This is why the Apocrypha is so vital, man. The water Yahweh B'Shem Yoshai. When I was woken up back in August of 2019, I had so many questions, right? And I didn't know. I heard the story of, I heard the breakdown of, let me see if I can find this Wisdom of Solomon 2, chapter 2. I believe it's 2. And I didn't know anything about the Apocrypha, right? Because they tell you that the Apocrypha is wrong in Christianity. But I want to get these precepts really quick. So this chapter 2, Wisdom of Solomon 2, goes into the inner workings of the mindset and the snares, the holes that Esau sets for the poor man. And we know the poor man is just like the word meek, just like the description of meek, or the description or title of sons of God, prophets, and saints. It's all specific. The word or the title poor man in the scriptures is specific to the Israelites, the Hebrew Israelites. So let me try to find, give me a second. Okay, so let's start with verse 10. Let us oppress the poor righteous man. This is talking about the Hebrew Israelites. And this is talking about Esau, Edom, and his rulership. Let us not spare the widow. See, so aren't we commanded to visit the orphan and the widow? Okay. Let us not spare the widow, nor reverence the ancient gray hairs of the age. Let our strength be the law of justice, not the law of Yahweh B'Shem Yoshai, not the law of Moses, but their law. Their law is a counterfeit law. Their law is where they get their veneer of righteousness. This is how Esau makes himself look righteous and holy. He has to show himself on television, in the media, arresting and pursuing Jake. They're always chasing us. Why? Because they are the accuser of the brethren, and they're always saying that we are doing something wrong. So look at this, verse 11. Let our strength, right, be the law of justice. There's no mention of a relationship with Yahweh. Their power is not Yahweh. It's the appearance of righteousness through the way that they craft their laws. Let our strength be the law of justice, for that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth. Therefore, let us lie in wait for the righteous. How do they lie in wait for the righteous? I'm going to pull that really quick. Let me finish this verse, and I'm going to pull the 13th Amendment. Therefore, let us lie in wait for the righteous, because he is not for our turn, and he is clean contrary to our doings. He upbraideth us with our offending the law. Talking about the true law. See, so you see a division. You see a law mentioned in verse 12, right? And then you see a law mentioned in verse 11. But the law mentioned in verse 11 is Esau's, and the law mentioned in verse 12 is Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai's, and they're different. One is counterfeit and one is true. One is a whore and one is the bride or the virgin. You see what I'm saying? Therefore, let us lie in wait for the righteous, because he is not for our turn, and he is clean contrary to our doings, he upbraideth us with our offending the law, and objecteth to our infamy, the transgressings of our education. Now let me jump really quick. Hold on. Let's do this. Let's find the 13th Amendment. Now look at this. Let us lie in wait. Remember? 13th Amendment. Yep. Let's see if I can find. Okay. Let me see if I can find how it's written. Because they used this to make themselves look good, and all it was a snare and a what do you call it? It was a snare and an enchantment. Okay, so look at section 1, 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, and then this is the clause, except. So that's the revolving door. That's the loophole. So you see neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. They're going to free everybody, right? They're such a good group of people. Except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been fully convicted. Now remember, when this was written, Israelites didn't have any rights to defend themselves in court against an Edomite. So right there, all an Edomite had to do with an Israelite, a so-called black man, a so-called Latino man, so-called Native American man, is say you did something. It's all they had to do is say you did something. And because of the law, let me see if I can find that law. Give me 2 seconds. The law, when was the law written that I'm just going to say black man could not defend himself in court against a white man? Let me see. Boom, look at that. On March 6, 1857, Chief Justice Roger T. read the majority opinion of the court, which stated that enslaved people were not citizens of the United States and therefore could not expect any protection from the federal government or the courts. You see this? So you see the contradiction in their fucking laws, man. And how this people writes. These are wicked people. And who wrote these laws? They are the so-called white men, the biblical Edomites, right? And so when you look at this, these contrary wickednesses, you see these types of laws, you go back to Wisdom of Solomon 2, and then you see how it points them out. And they're the only race of people on the earth that points them out perfectly like this. You go down and you read this whole chapter, you guys, Wisdom of Solomon 2, it breaks them down inwardly on how they operate in their wicked laws, how they manufacture their laws. Let us oppress the poor righteous man, verse 10. And let us not spare the widow, nor reverence the ancient gray hairs of the age. Let our strength be the law. Talking about those wicked laws they write, the 13th Amendment. That's the law they're talking about. They're not talking about the 10 Commandments. They're not talking about the prophets. They're not talking about the precepts in Scripture. They're not talking about the new song. Let our strength be the law, not Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, but the way we can oppress. Let our strength be the law of justice, for that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth. Therefore, let us lie and wait for the righteous. Let us ensnare them by saying they cannot defend themselves in court if they are enslaved. And then let us write the 13th Amendment by saying no man shall be a slave unless by reason of a crime. It's a revolving door, you guys. This is how Esau gets down. Therefore, let us lie and wait for the righteous, because he is not for our turn, and he is clean contrary to our doings. He upbraideth us with our offending the law. Now that law is talking about the law of Moses, talking about the prophets, talking about the law that Yahweh Shai came to fulfill. And objecteth to our infamy, the transgressings of our education. Let's go back to the video real quick, because I'm short in time.
Inshallah, one day they will this to say that no one who commits a crime in America is more likely to be punished for that crime than an African American. And in fact, it's also more likely for an African American.
And we know the so-called African American are who? The tribe of Judah. And we know the so-called Mexicans, they are the northern kingdom, the tribe of Issachar, and it goes on and goes on. Those are the Israelites.
American person to be wrongfully convicted of a crime of which they are accused. And it's more likely for them to even be punished for that, even when they have been proven innocent. And you can look at the case right now of Marcellus Williams.
Now, let's pull that up. Marcellus Williams. I saw him on TikTok. I believe he's been in prison for Marcellus Williams. See, it just comes right up. This gentleman right here. A Missouri death row inmate set to be executed in less than a week asked the U.S. Supreme Court to halt his execution. His DNA evidence came back clean. So he, I don't know a death row inmate in Missouri who has long claimed his innocence and is scheduled to be executed in less than a week asked the U.S. Supreme Court on Wednesday for a stay of execution, arguing his due process rights were denied during the years-long legal battle to save his life. Marcellus Williams, 55, was convicted of first-degree murder in 2001 in the death of Felicia Gale. I believe it's a white woman, too. A one-time newspaper reporter found stabbed to death in her home in 1998. His execution is set for September 24th. In court documents, lawyers for Williams note former Missouri Governor previously halted Williams' execution identically and formed a board to investigate his case and determine whether he should or be granted clemency. His DNA wasn't found. They did a test. Let me see if I can find it. So killing Mr. Williams, a black man who was wrongfully convicted of killing a white woman, would amount to a horrible miscarriage of justice. Well, we know that they're wicked, so. But that's what I saw in a video, that it was showing the reason for the whole case is he's not just saying he's innocent. His DNA, somebody else is here. Let me see if I can I want to see if Salaki.
It's been 3 years. He is scheduled to be executed, and there are last-minute efforts to save Marcellus Williams. He has maintained his innocence for a 1998 murder in St. Louis County. Justina Coronel has been following the case. She joins us from the newsroom.
Well, this week, several appeals were made seeking a stay. Now, this isn't the first time Marcellus Williams faced a close call in being executed. In 2017, former Governor Eric Greitens paused his execution just hours before. Now, Williams inches closer to
So why would they pause it? Think about it. Why would they pause it?
another scheduled death.
Like, I hope a miracle happens, you know what I'm saying?
Marcellus Williams Jr. prays for a different outcome for Dad.
I would want people to know he has a huge heart, you know what I'm saying? He's very caring.
His dad, Marcellus Khalifa Williams, faces execution on Tuesday for a 1998 murder in St. Louis County. Williams has maintained his innocence. Now, several appeals to Missouri and federal courts are filed to issue a stay, including claims of new evidence of racial bias.
We found out that jurors were stricken from the jury panel.
Missouri NAACP president backs his attorney's arguments. Trial prosecutors unconstitutionally removed black prospective jurors because of their race. St. Louis University law professor Andrews Walker weighs in.
The only hope here is a due process ruling from the federal court saying whether or not Mr. Williams is guilty, there was racial bias, and that'll derail the execution.
Missouri Governor Mike Parson could also grant clemency at least 24 hours prior.
Governor Parson would probably grant clemency if the actual killer came forward and said, I did it. Beyond that, I think he is ready to execute Mr. Williams.
We have faith that Governor Parson will do the right thing.
Major decisions are still on the table days before time is up.
So if this is the way that he going out, we already made peace. I will be a witness to it, to the execution. I'm stand there firm and show my dad he's not alone if this what it comes to, you know.
Y'all, could you imagine yourself being
So lucky I had to find the DNA part because I didn't want that to go unsaid. But listen to this and I'll end the lesson.
in prison for a crime that you didn't commit, for one. Then for two, in just 4 short days, being executed for that same crime, even though DNA has already proven that you wasn't even on the scene when the crime was committed. Could you imagine that y'all just...
He's been scheduled for execution, even though prosecutors
themselves. But in 2024, the St. Louis...
So those were the two witnesses that Esau's system used against this man to prove their case, which goes back to who they are in Wisdom of Solomon chapter 2. All you got to do is, and then you can prove who they are by reading Wisdom of Solomon chapter 2, looking at endless amounts of cases like this, and then going into how the 13th Amendment was constructed, and then going into how the laws were constructed in 1857, that an enslaved person, which means an Israelite, because that's who was enslaved. See, they're craps, the devil, and when I say the devil, I'm talking about the so-called white man, because Satan, the prince demon spirit, didn't physically write those laws. A specific race of people did. An enslaved person takes away the identity or neutralizes the actual, it's talking about a specific race of people. But when you say enslaved person, it doesn't make the so-called white man look so bad, because it's a generalizing of what happened. You know what I'm saying? Just like when they wrote the 13th Amendment, no man shall be a slave. That generalizes everything. It takes off the crime. It takes off the oppression specifically to what they did to us. And Esau is a wicked person. So I'm going to let this continue.
The prosecutor's office had 3 independent DNA experts review the evidence that had been at the crime scene, and they all concluded that it was not Mr. Williams' DNA at the scene.
So what does Scripture say? And remember the division of law. You had the law of justice mentioned in second Wisdom of Solomon 2, or the second chapter of Wisdom of Solomon. I believe it's 10, and then you have the actual law mentioned in verse 11, right? And so, what does our law say? Let everything be established in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. And here you have 3 witnesses, 3 professional witnesses saying his DNA wasn't there. And yet Esau still is not backing up on his conviction of this man.
The prosecutors then filed a motion in court calling this a manifest injustice and asking to overturn the same conviction that their own office had gotten. But the Missouri Attorney General says tough. They told the state Supreme Court in 2003 that Mr. Williams should be executed even if he was found actually innocent, and they've been fighting the case ever since. Mr. Williams has been scheduled for execution on September 24th, 2024. He has one last hearing on August 21st. His lawyers are urging people to make TikToks or other social media posts about the case, as well as to sign a petition, and I'll put a link to that in the comments.
So we can see, going back to Wisdom of Solomon 2, pointing out who these people are and how they write their laws, and you see, and then it also proves that we are the Israelites, and that the curses that are explained in Deuteronomy 28 are the manifestation of this race doing this stuff too. So it proves who we are and it proves who they are. Again, I'm gonna end with this. Wisdom of Solomon 2, verse 10. Let us oppress the poor righteous man. That's Esau talking about oppressing Jacob. Let us not spare the widow. The widow is also Jacob. Nor reverence the ancient gray hairs of the aged. Right. Let our strength be the law of justice. For that which is feeble is found to be, let our strength be the law, and that's what you see. You see it with these wicked laws right here.
He's been scheduled for execution, even though
okay, that's what it is. Let our strength
prosecutors now say he was
be this. All this, what you're seeing.
He's been scheduled for
this is their strength, all right? Let our strength be the law of justice, for that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth. Now, verse 11 mentions their law, and then verse 12 mentions how we declare our laws, or the laws of the Most High, against them. Therefore, let us lie in wait for the righteous, because he is not for our turn, and he is clean, contrary to our doings. He upbraided us with our offending the law. What's the offending of the law? It's not talking about their laws. It's talking about how they offend the law of the Most High. I pray that this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rakakadash, and double honor to the elders and apostles, the great millstone of whom I learned from, and a shalom to the hopefully elect brothers that are taking this truth to the four corners of the earth, bidding the elect Israelites to the marriage supper of the Lamb, who is Yahushai. This is your brother Radah. Shalom.